Um, Hello, everyone. Um, Good afternoon. It's nice to be here, and I think we are going to start. Once again, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming for my presentation. Today I will be telling you about how to write on the storm and how to keep your quality level when you have a really big team. But before we start, I will tell you a couple words about myself. My name is Ilyas Asnin. I'm Android developer since 2016, and now I'm working HelloFresh as an Android engineer, and I'm mostly doing mobile DevOps things for the last year. A couple words about us. Who are we? We are basically a food delivery companies. We have more than 5 million installs in Google Play. We have approximately 50 Android developers, and we have something like also 50 iOS engineers in our team. We have more than 10 PRs merged every day on average, and we are keeping our master branch in is always in releasable state. Couple of words about the tools which we'll be using, but small disclaimers. I will try to give you during this presentation more of like general concepts, some ideas, some challenges which we face, uh, which we like. Some changes which we faced and how we solved them, and it was mostly about it. I will not show you like big parts of a code and how to do some stuff, or like you should put this value variable here to make it work. No, it will be more about general concepts and ideas. So basically we are using Bitrise as our CI system, we are using GitHub as our repository, and we also, like any Android team I believe, using Firebase and Google Play Console. So, okay, let's start talking actually about our challenges which we are facing in our pull requests and how it's going to affect us when we have this team. So basically, as you can see, I just basically put random dates into our GitHub and just make stoplights and filters, and you can see we have like 15, 18 merged PRs in day. So basically, that's a lot, and this brings so this brings us a couple of changes. So we have some mandatory requirements. Our master branch should be in reusable state 100% of the time. So this basically means in every moment of our life, we can just press one button and we start building our release. But also, in the same time, we want to have our crash-free rate to stay above 99.9%. So, and this is kind of tricky. And also, we have some good to have things, like it would be nice if we can match our pairs really fast, like in less than an hour, because when you have 15 pairs merged every day, so the longer your pair stays in state of PR, the bigger chance that you will have some problems. For example, like merge conflicts or something already changed, or so the faster, the better. And we are not doing any admin measures. This basically means that we are not skipping any mandatory requirements. I will talk about it like in literally a couple of seconds. And this also affects us as our master branch is reusable state and also all other requirements. But basically, let's start with the easy part and let's talk about admin measure. Basically, we are using GitHub checks for the PRs, and we can split all the GitHub checks in two big categories. The first one is mandatory and the second one is optional. I put some examples here. So for example, so mandatory requirement is like you need to have an approve on your pair. Your unit test should be passing, or your lint rules should be fine, and etc. etc. But the optional one could be also important one, for example, like size check. So you don't want to measure really big pairs, like 500 lines of code. In that case, it's quite, well, it's hard to give a good code review on that just to spot some problems. So, but also sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes you have like a little bit of refactoring, but actually it's not like refactoring. You're just moving files from one directory to another one, and in that case it could be really big PR. And but basically you're not changing anything here. So that's why this should stay as optional one. Also, I put here the example, for example, deep link tests. So like you can have special test suite with special type of code here. For example, deep links. It's like usually in apps, it's a part you implemented this once, and after that you are not touching this for like 95% of the time. So what's the reason to touch this suite if it's like really isolated stuff and you don't need to do anything with it? So yes, long story short, keep GitHub checks mandatory only for actually mandatory one. So if basically because if you don't have that, uh, because otherwise if you put some optional steps like size check into mandatory one, in that case this you will require some admin measures, because if you have admin measures it's tricky part, because sometimes you can skip really important things. There could be a bug, there could be problems related to that, and you are literally just skipping that. So in that case, keep them an optional one. And that's basically how we are avoiding admin measures. So let's go to the next and the most tricky part: how to keep your master branch in reusable state during the whole process, like everyday basis for the 100% over time. So, and I have a short answer for you. It's actually really short, like literally one word: tests. Tests, it's what helps your app to be stable, to work as expected. And let's talk a little bit more about it. So usually when we will try to Google something like what the test is in terms of like software development terms, so you will see something like this pyramid. You have end-to-end tests, you have unit tests. So like end-to-end tests, you should have only a few of them because they're really expensive in terms like it's hard to create them. They consume a lot of resources to run. So they are basically expensive. They take a lot of time to run. On the other side, you have unit tests, which are really, really small. They're testing like one function, super easy to create, super easy to support, super easy to use, and everything's fine. But in mobile terms, we also have this little bit weird thing in the middle, integration tests. And integration tests, well, I mean, we don't have usually in mobile apps, we don't have like big integration paths. So it's like we are not having like 15 different backend services which we are trying to cooperate and to work together. We usually like have one device and one API which we are using, and so it's like so we don't have like integration. But we have this special type of test. It's called mock test. I will tell about them a little bit more later on. But basically, this tests which are not going to the actual server, they're going to the mock server and receiving special responses to our request. So if you talk about numbers in our experience, right now we have around 9,000 of unit tests, we have around 350 UI test, and we have only one smoke slash end-to-end test. Basically, this single test will just check during the release process that we actually can connect to the main production server. We can do a simple login flow, and that's it. But what's a mock test? So this is how usually apps are working. This is how our app is working. We have our device, doesn't really matter if it's simulate or physical device, and we have server, for example, production or staging server for the tests. And if you want to use end-to-end test, there's a couple of problems with that. At first, you don't want to test anything from production because it could lead to some problems. For example, we are delivering companies, so everything related to the payments or to actual deliveries, you shouldn't test this in production because payment you need to spend real money on that. Delivery, well, I mean, you will need to cancel the deliveries after all because well, who wants to actually deliver something to the place which are not existed anymore? So you don't want to use production server for that. Staging server, well, staging server is not stable by default because it's staging server. It's also testing service for the backend engineers, so they are less stable. If the tests are less stable, in that case, there's bigger chance of flakiness that your UI test will fail. And if they will fail, in that case, your mandatory step, which we discussed a little bit before, will also fail. And if this will fail, in that case, you will need to do like random reruns or just wait for if everything will pass, or you will need to do admin match. And that's, well, not the best enough solution. So we were thinking what to do about that. We talked with iOS team and we created mock server. Basically, it's a server, super lightweight, but it doesn't work like a server in terms of like real actual server where something is happening inside. We are just connecting to the server. We are providing special configuration file where we are saying like, okay, we have API login request, and that in that case, if we ask you that, you give us this default JSON file in response with like user data, and we can use it. So it was nice. It was working. It was much more stable compared to the staging and production server. But this was another problem. The first thing we decided it was a good idea to share all the responses between two teams because, well, I mean, obviously we're using Android team connecting to one server, iOS using doing the same to the same server. But this could lead to some problem. For example, I from Android side could change something, and this could possibly break some tests in iOS side and vice versa. So it's not the most optimal one. And the second, really not optimal thing about that, it was built by the iOS team and they're using Swift for that. And well, what's the main difference between Android build systems and Mac? Oh, not Mac, iOS systems. Basically, for iOS app, we are using macOS systems, but for Android, we can use anything, and we are using Linux machines because they're basically cheaper compared to the macOS machines. And in that case, if you want to use a server, we need to create it locally to run the server, but we will need to install Swift, we will need to install Wrapper, and all the stuff like that. So it wasn't the best solution. But after that, we started thinking what we can do to optimize this thing. And we found a solution. To connect to the mock server, we were just overriding interceptor in our HTTP library just to go to the mock server. But the next question is why do we actually need a server? We can do it like that. We can just basically use our own device as a server for our own app for the tests. We are just, and we call this local mock server. Uh, Basically, the same override interceptor. We are using the same configuration file. We are using the same responses, and we are just asking them. And when we need new special response, just interceptor from HTTP library will return this exactly needed result. And but from the other side of the app, this will look like exactly like normal flow. And there's good things and there's pros and cons about it. So the pros is much more stable compared to the previous solution. And now you don't need to work with two repositories because before that, if you update something in, for example, you create new UI test with a new API, you will need to create new responses. You will need to put them into mock server, and if you put them into mock server, in that case, you need to second PR into that repository. You don't need to build another app. So in that case, we are reducing our build time, we're reducing potential money spent on the CI system because well, basically less build means are used. But the cons with that, we are still testing too much because, yeah, I mean, well, we are testing like all the layers, like from the network layer all the way up to the UI level, and sometimes it's more tricky part to uh, find to spot problem, and also not everything can be tested actually. Well, especially web views. Well, you potentially can test them, but it's kind of tricky. It's also not so stable, and right now we are not doing that. Like we are not testing content of web views inside. We are just testing that like web view was loaded with the correct link and it's actually shown on screen, but not the content on it. The next option, how you can improve your stability of your master branch is Netlib builds. Basically, our Netlib builds, it's the exact same workflow as our release builds. The only difference here is the Google Play upload. We are not uploading anything to Google Play Store during the night. But overall, that's how we are using. Why it's a good solution, we think, because the first, it's a really convenient way to do that. Because usually during the nights, your CI is free, it's not building anything. So why not use this free time to build something, to check something? The second option that every morning you're just opening your laptop, you're just grabbing a cup of coffee, and you can read through Slack messages to check if everything was fine with this nightly builds, and you can go on. Or if there is a problem, in that case, well, you can start immediately reacting to them. You don't need to wait for the next release cycle to spot a problem and try to fix it immediately when you have, like, actually, there is a release ongoing and something is not working. You need to do something with that quite fast. So you're also avoiding that problem. So, and that's how we think that it's a good option to keep your master branch in releasable state during the whole process. And now let's jump into a completely different topic. It's a topic how to be fast. Uh, let's just think about different stuff, not about programming at all. So you have a lot of tasks which you need to do, and these tasks are independent one. What's the easiest option and the fastest way to solve this problem? Well, usually it's just bring a couple more friends and do this together. And this is exactly what we applied to our test. We created all tests in parallel. As you can see, the left column, it's the time actually we needed to run all of our UI tests during the single build approach. It was taken about from 45 to 50 minutes to build all the tests, to run all the tests. Oh, small disclaimer. Here it's only about the test itself, so it's how actually UI test step will take time. It's not including the compilation process because it was before. So it's like we are compilating, we are making some compilation, we are building artifacts, and we are distributing these artifacts to the shards. So with a single shard, it was 15 for up to 50 minutes, and we decided, okay, it's time to go parallel, and we created 4 shards. Right now, it's actually 5 shards because we implemented a little bit more tests. Uh, each shard takes you around 20 minutes, so you save in 30 minutes. That's quite good. What's like downside of it? Well, now you are spending more money in terms of build minutes. So with a single shard, it's single build. You have 50 build minutes. With you, now we have 4 shards with like 20 minutes on average. In that case, it will be 80 build minutes. So you have to find the balance. Like it's also, of course, it depends on workload of your CI. But usually, the main idea how to speed up all your build. So the first step when you're actually building, use the most advanced machines you have to build the actual app faster. After that, distribute these build artifacts to the different builds. And when you will be testing and usually run UI tests step, you can use cheaper machines for that. Because when it goes to the UI testing, it's more about Espresso performance. Well, for example, if you're using Espresso, of course, but you're using UI. So it's more about your app performance. And this is more about this performance. So it's like if you will use more expensive or more powerful machines, it will won't make a big change for you. And yeah, that's how you making your things faster, and at the same time you are not spending too much unnecessary time or too much unnecessary money. And okay, let's talk about the last topic which I want to cover in that speech. It's how to keep your crash-free rate about 99.9%. So we kind of talked about this when we were talking about the master branch and releasable state, because it's, well, I mean, we are using a lot of tests, so test covering, test finding problems, test fix helps us to keep our stability rate. But the second option is your release process itself. And how our release process works, it's a little bit complicated. We have a cutoff. So we have the weekly release process. So every 2 weeks we are doing a release. We have a cutoff. For example, right now we are doing that on Fridays. Friday evening we are creating a new release branch, and during the whole weekend, our site will build all automation steps. So it will just upload to Google Play. It will run all the UI tests, all the link checks, everything. And in the Monday, we can start doing manual stuff, part of the test. So basically, manual check-ins is the part when people from different teams, they're checking everything is fine from their side. So this basically means, for example, there could be like a new feature, it doesn't have UI test yet. So in that case, it should be tested manually. So, and they need to test this manually and tell us that everything is fine. Or there could be possible problem with the test itself, like test failed by somehow, it could be flaky, it could be some problems. It's, well, something is actually could happen with test. So in that case, they're just deciding what to do with that. Usually it's like, okay, we will just test this flow manually and fix this test during the next 2 weeks. But right now, let's stick with that. And there's 2 options which could be next. So the first option is we found critical problem. which we need to fix. In that case, yes, we are just creating a fix for this branch and merging everything into release branch. CI triggers new build. And voila, we are going to the next step with manual check-ins, and we are repeating this process until everything is fine. Now we are just submitting app to Google Play Store, and we are doing 20% rollout. And in that moment, it's time to keep track of your app. So we are doing this for 3 days. We are actively using, like every day, we are using Firebase, we are using Google Play Console, just to check if everything is going all right with that. And there is, once again, there is two options. Everything is going all right. Well, 100% rollout, we succeeded. So successful release, everything's fine, good to go. But sometimes there is a problem, like could be a crash, could be a bug, and so in that case we have hot fixes. So hot fixes basically the same process as usual workflow with a master branch. So it's like basically we are once again creating automation testing and all the steps and succeed. So okay, that's how we are solving our last problem. So some conclusions. GitHub checks are really important and you should avoid skipping them as much as possible. Second option, second conclusion. So automation tests are one of the most important things if you want to keep your app stable and your main branch in reusable state during the whole process. Nightly builds are a convenient way to keep track of your app quality because the CI is free. You are free in the morning, like 5 minutes. You check everything is fine. Go on. That's it. And the last one, parallel builds are faster but more expensive. So it's all about a balance. It's like there is no universal answer for every team. So every team should decide for themselves, like what do we want to do here. And yes, so thank you everyone for listening. I am now ready to answer your questions. So yeah, but to be honest, just give me a second. I don't see the questions. So okay, so yes, I can see the yes, I opened the correct conversation. I saw the first question about 99.1 crash free rate is it daily or weekly. It's basically what we want to keep daily during our process. Well, we want to keep this every day today. So I hope this answers your question, but if not, I would like to keep next question. And the next question, what do you do if during automation testing, as you said, it's over weekend, something broke? Do you have a person who's checking it over the weekend? No, we are not checking anything. Basically, we are not working during the weekends. So it's like if everything was broken, like even we doing cut off at the Friday evening. If it's Friday, something is broken, we'll still be waiting until the Monday. If something is broken, it's okay, that's fine. We will just check everything next working day morning. So it will happen. In that case, it will be next Monday. So no, of course, short answer is no. So is okay. So answer it as question. So what benefits do nightly builds add if tests are being run in PRs and merged to main branches? There's actually a couple of reasons. It's a really nice, good question. The first thing, yes, they looks exactly the same, but still during the nightly builds we have a little bit more tests. As I already said, we had special end-to-end tests like with login flow, which we are not running on the PRs. This is the first difference. So it's like that we are running during the nightly builds. The second option, we are also running deep link tests, which I make you statement. So it's like we are not testing this on every PR deep links, but we are testing PRs during nightly builds. So we are checking nightly builds. for that. And also sometimes if you something could be good during the PR process, but sometimes this same thing could fail during the nightly. Why? Because this could be a flaky test, and that's also what we are checking. So I hope this answers the question. And I can see I have only 15 seconds left. So thank you, everyone. I will definitely share the link with my presentation with the organizers, so they will provide it to you somehow. And you was nice room. I would like to talk to you and see you later.